Christians have a pretty rightful judgment that we don't really care about works, about behavior, good or bad, because God forgives our sins, so it's all about grace and that sort of thing. But there is this warning at the end here, isn't there? That these kinds of behaviors that actually characterize, not anecdotally sinful people, but people who are characterized by these behaviors that would distort, pervert, and disturb creation will have no place. In no ability to do that. I sometimes like to think of it as a principal on a school playground, you know. A principal's job is to keep the bullies away so that everybody can enjoy the recreation that's there. And there's a sense in which, you know, if you're not willing to play well with each other, so to speak, you're not able to share in recess time. There's a sense in which this is kind of the, I think, the insinuation here. All right, what else? Yes.
Making all things new.
Making all things new. Notice the way it says that. Behold, I make all things new. Not, I make all new things. What's the difference?
The transforming, the changing of what's already there.
Yeah.
And all.
Yeah, and I think, you know, sometimes we have this sense that at the end of days, everything that God has made comes to an end, nice experiment, all over, done with. That was an interesting game God played with the world, and now, who knows, right? Because God's going to make all new things. That's not the biblical story. I mean, the biblical story is that God makes all things new. That is to say, more of a qualitative change. So that when you imagine the world to come, look, right? Look around. It's not about floating on clouds with harps and being in some unfathomable kind of situation. This is a concrete, this worldly sort of imagination that we get with the New Jerusalem. Again, another reason for the linking it to a place and a life that God has made and created. Good. Someone else?
Former things will not be remembered.
Former things will not be remembered. Now, this is a little bit challenging, isn't it? Because, especially in Jewish tradition, memory is so critically important, right? So, how would this be understood as being an important quality? Former things will not be remembered.
Maybe bad former things would not be remembered.
Bad former things, okay, all right. So aren't we all most of us haunted by certain memories that we can't seem to escape? And so I think that's a good way of putting it, that former things, the devastation, the brokenness, will not be remembered, but we'll truly be able to be free, inside and out. Okay, good. Someone else?
No weeping.
No weeping. Okay, good. And we talked about this, I think, yesterday when we were talking about the gift that pain is to us now, the gift that tears can be to us. But those gifts are still the product of a brokenness in the world that we're not looking forward to continuing. And so, yes, that's part of the hope, that there's a wholeness and a newness of wholeness.
And it says God himself will wipe the tears away from you.
Good, good. How often do we say, where is God, when we hurt? God himself will wipe the tears from your eyes.
Yeah, but before he calls, I will answer. So.
Yes, right.
The Alpha and the Omega.
Right.
Mentor, and you sort of think of ends of the bridge, and he's everything in between us.
Nice.
As far as being the beginning and the end.
The beginning and the end. Very good. You're doing well.
It is done.
It is done.
The similarity of that phrase to the phrase with your crucifixion is coming.
It is finished. Good. All right. Very good. So in this case, there is a sense of completion to it that is final. Okay. Right. Yes.
When you were mentioning that memory is so important in Judaism, there was a quote that just remembered when we saw at Yad Vashem the other day, and we were asked to out with a name. And I came out with a name, Nina, and her quote was, "Eventually we will survive, but we will not recover." That was her quote.
Right.
So I feel that her recovery is through our memory
Okay.
of what happened and retelling that story.
Good,
So I
good.
think that's part of this memory thing.
What I would hope is that her recovery will finally be at last in the new creation. Okay. Good. Someone else? It would be possible to read this about the new Jerusalem coming down from heaven as if this were a world of, uh, of corrupted forms, kind of a Platonic understanding where up in heaven there's an ideal Jerusalem where God is in an invisible sense, and finally God will bring the perfect down to the imperfect. But I think that's a much more Greek understanding than this text really wants, or that either of our faiths really should focus on. Instead, I think it's more like the first things have passed away. So now what we're looking at is not a spatial imagery of the New Jerusalem coming down, but a sense of the future, the age to come, the world to come, now has invaded our presence in such a way that we enjoy the full experience of it at last. So this ties together memory and hope. We had an interesting passage in the service book yesterday that talked about the age to come having the principle, right? And now, in our time, we experience the fruits of the principle that is in the age to come. This is a similar concept, I think, that what's happening is this notion of the New Jerusalem is where the fullness of God and the world, where it comes together. Heaven and earth come together as God intended it to be. There's a brokenness to the world now, but there's going to be a wholeness and a oneness, and we'll be able to experience that fully. This may be an implication. I know one Jewish scholar talks about the Shema and the oneness of God as being not only a confession of faith, but actually a prayer. A prayer that the oneness of God will be matched by God's oneness with the world, and that until all things come together in that way, we continue to say the Shema and pray for the oneness of God with the world, that unity that is yet to come. Yes, Brian?
George, it strikes me that there's also something that, a place where the faiths might come together. The concept of the world to come, as I understand it, is greatly debated in Judaism. No one really agrees on what it means, and so one interpretation I've been led to understand is that for those of us who don't have the same concept of it as Christians do, that the world to come might be when we walk over there. It's what's next. It's not just in some ethereal place after a corporeal death. It is in what is the next thing we do, which kind of ties in, I think, with Stephen, what you were just saying about the way we can repair the world, and so how we make the world better. This new Jerusalem may be something we help create, and it comes about next year.
Well, this is the tension between what's known as the already and the not yet that exists in both of our faiths. And one of the ways you might think of the unique contribution of Jews to Christians is the reminder to those of us who celebrate so much that Jesus has come and is the Messiah, and we celebrate the kingdom come already. Jews remind us in our relationship with them of the not yet, that the fullness of the kingdom is not yet experienced. And for all of our celebration, there is yet suffering in the world, there is yet a lack of fulfillment, and there is more for us to wait for. So therefore, we can never be